In this next module, we're going to talk about HTML and building the structure and a page layout. HTML is the markup of the web, the standard to build out our web pages. It's structural. You can think of it like the skeleton of the page. And we need to build that out. Usually it's tag-based syntax, and it's used for all sorts of web content, blogs, commercial sites, anything you can see. Web itself has this structure, this document on the World Wide Web. HTML has evolved over time. HTML1 was very static. I mean, it was meant to be scientific documents to be shared on the World Wide Web. So they needed ways to share information. In the beginning, it was very static, link-based. It didn't really look the greatest, but it was kind of limited. But it's evolved over time. Now we're at HTML5, which has a lot of huge improvements. However, the structure is the same. We have an HTML element. It's a tag-based system, so you can think of a angle bracket and say a paragraph. You need whatever tag you open, you need to close, that type of syntax. Usually when we have a browser, we'll read the document, and usually when the browser scans through your document, it's going to look at it's going to look at the header tag. And in the header tag is going to have all the information that the browser needs, including dependencies, assets, things like images, maybe style sheets, maybe some type of scripting it needs to pull in. There'll be metadata in there for keywords, author, and viewport, and a description. Usually that's really used for SEO and search engine optimization. That's how those web crawlers find those pages, and that's how they know, based on the metadata. So once you get through the metadata, then there's going to be the body itself, the body of the page that's rendered. And this is what we're going to be building. We're going to be building out the page structure. In fact, we're going to be building a cryptocurrency tracker. But we need to put the structure in before we can make it look really great. We need to make sure that we have the semantics in there. We want to create a nice layout that's going to have a couple pictures in it and some information, perhaps some input controls for the user input so we can do some searching and filtering. This is the basic building blocks, which we're going to start with, and then we're going to progressively add on top of it. So we want to focus on this page layout. We want to build that HTML structure out. Once we get this structure in this module, then we're going to use CSS to take control of the visual aspect of it. Things like positioning and image sizing, basically the padding, the margin, those types of things, how the layout is going to position itself and the spacing it has. Then we get into responsive design. That's where we're going to be mobile first, and we're going to make sure that what we build in our interface is going to look good on the desktop, tablet, and mobile. Built HTML. He said it's a standard markup language for creating all web pages and web applications on the internet today. These are some tags we're going to be using. You can see here I talked about a paragraph tag. So a paragraph tag would be open angle bracket P and closing angle bracket. The P element would correspond to the paragraph. H1, H is a header. So predefined, we will have different sizes of headers based on H1, H2, H3, H4, all the way to H6 is the smallest. The browser has default styles for these things. So when you put them into the markup, they will have a default appearance. We're going to be working with an image tag, IMG, and then hyperlinks is the A. Best practices for coding, we got to make sure that we are writing semantical HTML. We want to make sure we're writing valid HTML. We want to make sure if we open a tag, we close a tag. We want to make sure that we keep the presentation separate from the content. So a really good practice for a web developer using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is there is separation of concerns there. Each file is separate, so we can have a clean presentation and content, and we keep them separate because over time they get really, really large, and we want to make sure they're not all mixed together. When we talk about React and future modules, we'll revisit this statement. But for now, traditionally, this is how we approach building a web application. When we talk about coding clean practices, we want to make sure that we're consistent with naming styles. If we're building CSS classes, we want to be consistent as well. We want to make sure that we have meaningful IDs and classes on our elements when we get to CSS. But we want to be mindful that we want to optimize for performance because using large images, large scripts, having unnecessary dependencies can slow down the rendering of your browser and as well as your website loading time. So we're going to use this and we're going to build the beginning structure of a cryptocurrency tracker next.